In this lesson, you will learn how to find the slope given 2 points. So let's review. We have learned that slope is the ratio of the vertical change to the horizontal change, which can also be referred to as the change in y compared to the change in x, and also can be referred to as the rise compared to the run. So when we were working with slope from a graph, we would be kind of looking for that vertical change compared to that horizontal change, or the rise to the run. And so we started with our point on the left. So we would start at this point here, and we would go down however many it would be so we could match up to that point. So in this case, we would be going down 1, 2, 3, and we would run over 2. We could also continue and go down another 3 and over 2. So that means that our slope would be a -3/2. So we went down. We could see that this line is going down from left to right, and so our slope would be negative. We can also determine slope from a table. So given a table of values, we can see the relationship between our x values here. So what is happening between, for x to go from -2 to 0. So in that case, we would be adding 2. And in the y situation, we would be subtracting 3 to go from 9 to 6. To go from 0 to 2 on our x value, we would add 2. And to go on our y value from 6 to 3, we would be subtracting 3. And similar here, to go from 2 to 4 on our x values, we would add 2. And to go from 3 to 0 in our y values, we would subtract 3. So we can see that we are changing by the same amount on our x and our y values. So we can write this as a ratio as our change in y to our change in x. So our change in y was -3, and our change in x is +2, which is the same as a slope of -3/2. So you can see that the point 0, 6 is this point on the graph, the point 2, 3 is that point on the graph, and the point 4, 0 is this point on the graph. So we can see that no matter if we were to graph it or have a table, our slope is the same. So now we are going to look at finding slope from 2 points. And we have the formula for slope. We also use the variable m to refer to our slope. So you'll often see the variable m when referring to slope. And so we say that it's our change in y. So we're kind of subtracting our y values and subtracting our x values to find the difference, or that change in that vertical and compared to the horizontal. So when we have two ordered pairs, we label them as kind of our first set of ordered pairs and our first ordered pair and our second ordered pair. So we read this as x sub 1 and y sub 1. So all that means is that we have two ordered pairs. Our ordered pairs are always x and y. And the 1 just means that refers to our first ordered pair, and this refers to our second ordered pair. So it's just to kind of help us keep track of which ordered pair we're referring to in the formula. So we will, when we're working with these, we will label each ordered pair as we go. We will then substitute the values into the formula. We will then simplify the expression and make sure that our slope is also simplified when we're finished. So given the ordered pairs 2, 1, and 4, 7, we're going to label our ordered pairs, so our x sub 1, y sub 1, and x sub 2 and y sub 2. So now we are just going to substitute our y sub 2, and if we look, this is all lined up nicely for us, so we can see that our y sub 2 is 7, minus our y sub 1, which is 1, divided by our x sub 2, which is 4, minus our x sub 1, which is 2. So when we substitute our values into the slope formula, we would have m equals 7 minus 1 divided by 4 minus 2. We would then simplify the numerator, so 7 minus 1 is 6, and simplify the denominator, so 4 minus 2 is 2. So we would have a slope that is equal to 6 over 2, which we could then continue to simplify, and 6 divided by 2 would be the same as 3 over 1, or we could just write that as a slope of 3. So that's where you can write your slope either way here as long as it is simplified. So let's compare that to our graph. So if we were to have the point 2, 1 and the point 4, 7 on the graph, we can see that starting with our point on the left that we would go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and over 1, 2, and we would land on that point 4, 7. So that means that our slope would be up 6 and over 2. We can also see that when it's simplified, we got 3 over 1. So if we start at our first point, we go up 3, 1, 2, 3, and over 1, we can also see right there that there's a point of intersection at that point where that line crosses an x and y at an integer value. So we can now see that we have our graph, we have our table, we have two ordered pairs. We can see how they're all related, and it's just a different way of finding the exact same piece of information. So let's look at another one. So if we have the ordered pair -6, -1, and 3, -4, I'm going to label those as our first ordered pair and our second ordered pair. So when we substitute this into the slope formula, so our y sub 2 is -4 minus our y sub 1, which is -1. So one of the really key parts to remember is that this minus sign is that difference, that change in our y. So just because there's a minus sign here, you have to be true to what the y sub 1 value is, which is -1. So making sure that you substitute those values in correctly. So then we would have that divided by our x sub 2, which is 3. So we substitute that into the equation, minus our x sub 1, which is -6. We can then simplify this to our slope is equal to -4, and we have the opposite of -1, so that minus negative, we can rewrite that as the addition of 1, divided by 3 minus -6, or the opposite of -6 can be written as 3 plus 6. So in continuing to simplify, -4 plus 1 is -3, and 3 plus 6 is 9. And then we can simplify -3 divided by 9, or -3/9, as the slope of -1/3. So let's compare this to the graph. So if we have our ordered pairs plotted on this graph at -6, -1, and at 3, -4, we can start at that point, and we're going to that point there. So we can see that we have a slope that we are going down 3 and to the right 9, which would then simplify to -1/3. We can also see where those other points would be on that graph. If we look at the points -4, 5, and -8, -5, and labeling our ordered pairs, when we substitute these values into the slope formula, our y sub 2 is -5, minus our y sub 1 is 5. Our x sub 2 is -8, minus our x sub 1 is -4. So we can simplify the denominator as -8 minus -4. The opposite of -4 is the same as adding that opposite, which would be +4. And so -5 minus 5 is -10, and -8 plus 4 is -4. We can then simplify -10 divided by -4 as a slope of +5/2. So leave that slope as an improper fraction there. We just want to make sure that we get it as simplified as we can. So the slope is +5/2. So we can also see on the graph when we plot these points, so if we have the point -4, 5 and the point -8, -5, that we could go up 5 and over 2 and up 5 and over 2. And we can see where this slope of +5/2 comes from. We can also see that if we were to go down 10 and to the left 4, that's where that negative divided by a negative slope came from as well. If we were given the points 5, 4 and -3, 4, and substitute those values into our formula. So our y2 is 4 and our y1 is 4, so we would have 4 minus 4. And our x sub 2 is -3 minus our x sub 1 is 5. And simplify this, so 4 minus 4 is 0, and -3 minus 5 is -8. And so if we have a slope of 0 divided by -8, that means that our slope is 0. So when we plot these points on the graph, we can see that this creates a horizontal line, which we know has a slope of 0. And last one, if we have the points -2, 6 and the point -2, -7, when we substitute our values into the slope formula, our y sub 2 is -7 minus our y sub 1 is 6. Our x sub 2 is -2 minus our x sub 1, which is -2. We can rewrite -2 minus -2 as -2 plus 2. So then we would have a slope of -13 divided by 0. We cannot divide by 0, so that means that our slope is undefined. We can see this when we graph these points or plot these points on the coordinate plane. If we plot the point -2, 6 and the point -2, -7, we can see that we have a vertical line, which means that we have an undefined slope. So now we have seen how to find the slope from a graph, how to find slope from a table, and now how to find slope given 2 points.